Hi, this is Don Trenton. I'm working with Cisco on the Firepower Management Center REST API. And this video will demonstrate how to use the Firepower Management Center REST API to register Firepower devices on an FMC host. There are two kinds of Firepower devices: Firepower Threat Defense, or FTD, and Next Generation Intrusion Prevention System, NGIPS. We'll register both types in this demo. This demo will walk us through the following steps for registration. First, we open a Linux shell console to connect it to the device to be added to the FMC. To do this, we'll use a client such as OpenSSH or PuTTY, and we'll configure the device to accept a connection from the managing FMC. Next, from the API Explorer, we'll send a post device records request with the following required data fields in the request body: name, host name, reg key, type, license caps, and access policy. Finally, we'll verify whether the device registration process ran successfully. So let's get started. We'll run PuTTY and do the first step, which is to set up the connection manager. Right? With PuTTY, what we want to do is connect to the device that will be connected to the host. Our first device is an FTD device, and its IP address ends in 159, so I call it FTD 159. We'll open a connection to it. Here's our shell. Now the commands that we want to run to set up a connection manager, well, first we have to log in. Okay. We'll log in using admin. This is the admin account for the device to be connected, and it would probably be the default unless you've changed it. And we're logged in. Now we're going to run this command, configure manager add, but before we do, let's verify whether there is an existing manager on this device. We use the show managers command. We'll display any managers that are already there. It's clear, so we can go ahead and run configure manager add. And this command takes two arguments: hostname and reg key. Hostname is the IP address of the host Firepower Management Center. So in this case, it is, for both devices, the host is this IP address ending in 153, and then the next argument is called reg key, and this is an alphanumeric string that you define that you'll use to identify the device at registration time. For this device, we call it dev 159, and no spaces are allowed. I'll just verify that. Device 159, dev 159. So this is what we want it to look like. Go ahead and run that. It takes about 30 seconds. All right, so device FTD 159 is successfully configured. You need to make a note of this reg key because it's not recorded anywhere. You put it in a text file. When you call the REST API will do the post device records command will take it. All right, we can exit. Now we'll run PuTTY again and configure the other device, which is NG-IPS device. We'll call it NG-IPS 151. Connect. Again, we log in with the admin account. All right. Again, we check to see if there are any existing connection managers. Now, one exists on this device. We'll want to clear that. If you know the registration key for that manager, you can use it. In this case, I'm not sure, so I'm just going to clear it using command configure manager delete. It's been deleted. We'll run configure manager add with the host name of the host, which is ending in 153. Again, that's the host that we're going to connect to, and we'll name the reg key dev151. Easy to remember. Run that. And when this is done, we'll have a connection manager set up for both of the devices. Manager successfully configured. And there it is. We can exit out of this shell, and we're ready to run the REST API commands. We'll be using devices, the device record service. We'll select post. And sometimes you have to log in. All right, we're clear. Let's take a look at what the post would look like. For post, there are parameters listed here, and you're going to put the request body here in this box that says body. All right. And this will be JSON data. Let's walk through what the JSON data looks like. Name, host name, reg key, type, license caps, and access policy are all required. The name is a string that you define. Host name can be the IP address or a server name. Reg key is the reg key that we used when we set up the connection manager. So I put that in there. So type is always device. We have to include this because it's required, but the value is always device. License caps. Now, this represents license capabilities on the device. Each type of device, FTD and NG-IPS, have different license capabilities. let's take a look at the difference here. So for NG IPS devices, for FTD devices, we were looking at that first. It supports malware, URL filter, and threat. Now there's some overlap between the two devices. They both support malware and URL filter. However, that's the only overlap. There are different values. And for an FTD device, you must specify base. This value is required. So if you see base, if you're registering an FTD device, that must always be there, at least. You can, when you register the device, you can use only one or a few and add later. You can update the license capabilities later using a put request. But for the purpose of this video, we'll do all the license capabilities. If you're doing an NG-IPS device, these are the allowed values. And just to be clear, when we talk about firepower threat defense devices, we're talking about the FTD, sometimes referred to as next generation firewall devices. The NG-IPS devices are next generation intrusion prevention system. These are the classic 7000, 8000 series legacy devices. So just be aware that there's a difference there. All right, so we're going to register FTD 159, and we have the name, hostname, reg key type, license caps are done. Access policy. An access policy is always required, so you have to make sure that you have first defined one on your system. You can do this with the REST API using policy, access policies, post. But that's a subject for another video. For the purpose of demonstration, I've already set up a couple of access control policies on this host. I've defined 2 for testing, and we'll see them in the dashboard here. And there they are. Intruder Prevention ACP and Traffic Control ACP are test policies that I set up on this host. And we'll use one of these. All right. So for FTD, we're going to assign it Traffic Control ACP. But the API doesn't want the name. This is optional. What it really wants is this ID. Now the ID is a unique ID that you have to obtain from the API. And we'll go to the access policies service, run get. What this will do is it will retrieve the IDs for those policies that I've already defined. We need to run that one more time. Okay. Now you see the response text shows up in this box down at the bottom, and it's less than optimal. So what I do is copy all, put it in an editor like Notepad++, and if we just paste it down here, we can analyze it. It looks a lot better. We're looking for a UUID that corresponds to Traffic Control ACP. So here we see a list of 2 policies. First one is Intruder Prevention ACP, and the second one is Traffic Control ACP. We want traffic control. Here's the ID. We'll copy that, and we put it here in this field for ID. There it is. All right, with all that data, we're ready to go. We're ready to run the post device records request. I'll copy this. We'll go back to the API Explorer, select devices, go to the device record service post operation, and we put our JSON data here in the request body. Just verify that it's all there. It seems to be well formed, and we run it by clicking post. You see here we got success indicator, and if we look at response info, you also see a status code, HTTP status code of 202. That's what we wanted. All right, let's copy that response JSON, take a look here, and just see what we got. You see what it did was reflected back the values that we sent to the device, that we sent to the FMC host. The name is FTD159, host name, reg key as dev159 that we gave it. Here are the license caps that we requested. Access policy is traffic control ACP. That all looks good. You see that it also gave us a few other things. A version field, 601, that's the Firepower software version. A couple of booleans, keep local events that prohibit packet transfer. And also it gives us a task object with an ID. Now we'll use this task. This task object represents the device registration process itself, and we can use this ID to pull the device registration process to see if it's still running. The way you do that is to go to status, task statuses, get, and paste that ID in the request body. Now if it's still running, you'll get a task status of running. If it's completed, you don't get completed, you get an error as we got here. That means that the device registration is probably completed, but to really find out for sure, we'll go back to the dashboard. Go back to the devices dashboard, device management. We should see it here. It's there. The way you do that in the API is go to devices, device records, run get, and we should see that one device appearing in the response. And here it is. Device records returns a list of items. There's one device. Name is FTD159, it has an ID, and we're good. If you want all of the fields for that device, what you would want to do is add the query parameter expanded equals true. So by default, the API Explorer gives you terse responses. Expanded equals true will give you a verbose response. And in this case, it's not really a lot of data, but if you have hundreds of policies, hundreds of rules on your system, then that could get pretty messy. And you see there is a substantial amount of data that comes back for a device in a device record. This is a full device record. It has a lot of additional information on the model, type, health status, health policy, and all of the fields that we gave it, such as host name, license caps, and the other fields. All right. Now let's register an NG-IPS device. The data's here. This is the device ending with an IP address ending in 151, so we'll call it NG-IPS 151. Here's the host name. and the red key was dev151, which we used in the configure manager command. Type is device, always device. License caps are appropriate for an NG-IPS device, including malware, URL filter, protect, control, VPN. Just verify that up here, and that's right. The access policy, we're going to give it the same access policy as the other one, just for demonstration purposes. And all this data, so all this data is essentially what we need. The access policy could be a different access policy. If we wanted to get it different, we get the ID, run get policy access policies, and it would return all the IDs. We could get the other one, but we don't have to do that. So for this, we'll use devices, device records, post. We'll put the JSON request data into the body. It appears to be correct, and we'll run post. Again, we got success. And let's quickly get this task ID and try to run it on task statuses, just to see if we can catch it while it's running. Okay, we did. The registration may only last 10 seconds, 20 seconds. We caught it while it's running, and this is what we want to see. I go down here. This is what a successful task status looks like. We see that the task type is device registration. It's a RESTful task, and it's running. Now, if I were to run this again, and I suspect that the device registration is done, it'll probably fail. No, it's still going. It's interesting. How we can tell for sure is if we go back to devices and run get. Let's see if we get one device or both devices. I see NGPIS 151. It's appearing there, as well as FTD 159. So they're both there. I bet if I run task statuses again, you would expect to get a response of completed. But we don't. That's not supported. You only get a successful response when it's running. So it's completed, we get an error, that process no longer exists, so we get no resource found. Right, so we did run get device records, and we saw that both of the devices have been registered on the system. NG should be IPS 151 and FTD 159. We can also verify this by going to the devices page on the dashboard in FMC, and it looks like here it is actually still in the process. It is still in the process of setting up that device. But we see that FTD 159, which is a firepower threat defense device, there's the IP address. It's all showing correctly. The other device is NGIPS V for VMware, and that's setting up right now. We probably have some server latency, but in time you'll see a green check mark for both of the devices here, indicating that the status is complete, and you'll also see it in the status window up here. And that's the demonstration of how to use post device records to register a device on FMC. Also how to use get device records to verify that the devices exist, and also how to use get task statuses to see if the device registration process is running properly.